Autoline After Hours is brought to you by Alex Partners, when it really matters, and by Borg Warner. The automotive industry continues to evolve, and so do the opportunities to define it. Borg Warner, one of the world's most admired companies, gets partners where they need to go. Let's do something big together.
Welcome, everybody, to Autoline After Hours. Going to have an interesting discussion today on artificial intelligence in cars. We're going to get into the news of the week in the second half of the show. But, Gary, always good to have you here.
Good to be here. Missed you last week.
I know. I was at a conference that I learned a whole lot about things going on in the industry. It was good, but I did miss the show. Well, we got to let everybody know we've got Kathy Rizk here from J.D. Power and Associates. She's done some very interesting research into what consumers think about all this AI stuff coming into cars. And we've got our colleague, Perry Stern, back on the show. And Perry, great to have you here.
Great to be here.
So, Kathy, AI in cars. What did you set out to try to figure out? What kind of research did you do? Tell us about it.
Yeah, so I lead our Tech Experience Index study. So that looks at advanced technologies in the vehicle. And so we started last year to dabble in it a little bit. We have 40 technologies in the study, and we started to put a few of the AI technologies in there. And then for this year, we added 7 in total. So we are looking at things like generative AI that's learning that behavior from the customer, as they're driving, what are those requests they're asking for, to smart climate control, where it can automatically sense if, the sun is coming in the passenger side. It not only adjusts the temperature, the fan speed, but the vents. And so several technologies like this. And we wanted to measure that impact. Normally, we're looking at like the HMI experience for these technologies and what the user, any problems the user's having or anything that delights them. But this technology doesn't really have that HMI experience. So it was a very different area for us.
So Kathy, these are technologies that are actually in vehicles. This isn't something that you guys are saying, well, someday we'll do this.
Yeah, no, these are actually in the vehicle. And so they're not on a lot of models yet. There's only on each technology is only on a handful.
But you've also found, right, that, this in-car experience, the UX or whatever you want to call it, is a high factor.
Combination, right? So, we found that some of this technology reduced some of the problems they're having. Like we've been tracking that climate controls, as we put them into the infotainment system, has become a lot more problematic for drivers as it's a distraction, right, to go in there to try and adjust the climate. And with smart climate controls, they're not having to go in and actually interact with that. So they're really, embracing that technology. They feel like it reduces that driver workload and it's less distracting. But there are some of these technologies, that they don't want the vehicle learning too much or the manufacturer actually learning too much about them.
So when you're talking about this smart climate control, so many vehicles have automatic climate control. You set it at 72 and it goes to 72.
Right.
This is more specific to the passenger and to the driver, and
it's to the vehicle in general, but I was just giving that one example. But it's a step beyond auto, so it can adjust the vents, right? And if you tie that with smart glass, which can actually tint the glass if the sun is coming in. So we're starting to see all of this stuff where the driver has to do a lot less.
Do people like the fact that the car is doing all this for them, or does it make them nervous?
I think for some people, they don't even realize, right, that workload's been reduced. But, others are really welcoming the fact that it's, we have like, smart driver preferences. It learns if you want a certain ambient lighting at night, or you put your seating position in a particular way, or use, one drive mode in the morning and a different drive mode at night. So they like that it's learning their behavior and it's, doing that work for them. But on the other hand, they don't really want the auto manufacturer tracking, what is that voice, recognition type question they're asking, or, with the direct driver monitoring camera, so, and they have concerns about all this data privacy of what's happening with all this information that's being collected.
Yeah, I want to get into that, but let's go. You sent us some slides, and one that I thought was very interesting was using generative AI to improve the native infotainment system, i.e. the one that the automaker has put in the car. And you just touched on voice recognition. Go into that, because we all test drive cars here.
Yeah.
And we've experienced how bad most of the car companies' voice recognition systems are compared to our phones, which handle it easy breezy. And what I've been told is that's because your phone puts the inquiry up into the cloud where there's
Right.
massive computing power, versus your car, that unless these car companies put in very expensive microprocessors, they can't do it. But it sounds like maybe AI is cleaning that all up.
AI is helping. So we've seen this advancement in the voice assistant, right? For years, it wasn't connected to the internet. Then most of them became connected to the internet, and it got better, but it didn't change drastically, right? And now we have generative AI, and it's really starting to help because it's learning what the customer is going to be asking. So, once it starts to understand that better, right, the customer is starting to have a better experience. And what we found, John, I thought was very interesting, is people are using the infotainment system more on vehicles that have generative AI. And I would tell you that most customers don't know they have generative AI, right? But they're finding that it's working better for them. And so we're seeing them use the native navigation system more. They're using the voice assistant more. And in total, when we ask them, their infotainment system, those that are using generative AI, we've seen an increase in the percent actually using that versus Android Auto or Apple CarPlay.
Is there any way to tell if your car's got Gen AI in it?
I think it's very hard for them to know if they have that.
Very interesting.
So, I mean, is this something that automakers are keeping under the radar, as it were, or is this something that you think could be promoted as a feature?
I don't think right now a lot of them are promoting it as a feature, but I think they could, right? Because of the benefits we're already starting to see very quickly in terms of customers using that system more. But, in all fairness, some of those systems are AAOS with gas, right? So some of them are Google's, system that's integrated into the car, but not all of them. Companies like Mercedes is offering this technology, and several other manufacturers.
Do people still prefer to use Android Auto or Apple CarPlay though? Since those, as you were saying, the voice recognition in those systems work so well. And I think people get used to that and they want to have the familiar interface. Is that something that people aren't going to give up very easily?
I don't think they're going to give it up easily, but we are seeing an increase. And I think that was like a step in the right direction.
Increase in what?
In using the native system.
Got it.
We think that's a step in the right direction, but will it just ultimately replace, Apple CarPlay or Android Auto? I don't think so. Not right now.
Well, the automakers would love to have a fighting chance.
They would like to have the fighting
chance.
chance.
Got to pay royalties on this stuff.
Yeah.
I was looking just earlier this week at iPhone sales. I mean, there are so many iPhones out there, and there's so many people who are familiar with that interface. There's no way in hell that the entire auto industry combined can get anywhere even near that. So I just don't see that as being a possibility.
Although it is surprising that some car companies have started to remove it. General Motors, with all their EVs, no longer offers it.
Yeah.
Which
how are those
is an odd
sales doing?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I have no idea how much
I don't know.
that
GM
affects
is
it,
doing a better job than most in selling EVs.
Yeah.
But in some way,
Equinox.
but in some ways where they have an advantage is they can use this to control more than what CarPlay or Android Auto could, right? So they can do a lot more things.
Like what?
Like controlling the temperature, right? Or, ultimately we can see more, more long-term potential from the automaker using this for other applications in the car and not just within infotainment.
Mm-hmm.
CarPlay Ultra.
They're getting more. They're also getting more. I'm not saying they're not. It's a battle, right? But it is a little bit. It's a small win for the automakers that have this right now.
What has your research turned up in terms of driver monitoring, people concerned about privacy and data and that sort of thing?
Yeah, so data privacy in general, if I can take a step back for a minute, when we look at any of those connected technologies, that is a big concern. When we ask, what improvements are needed for these type of technologies, whether it's your music, your phone, they're very concerned about the fact of that there isn't great data privacy rules, right? And so that comes up almost in the top 3 improvements when we ask, what needs to be changed with these various technologies. And when we look at direct driver monitoring in total, right, there is very concern about, that camera watching them, and it's not truly recording it in the vehicle, right? Right? The automaker's not using a video of them, but I don't think customers truly understand that. And what irritates them the most is really all the notifications, right? Pay attention. If you look out the window for a second, you're getting a notification, right? And it's frustrating.
You even had, they're frustrated. I think Hyundai is the one that does it, that if the car in front of you, if you're stopping at a stoplight or stop sign, the car in front of you pulls away, you'll get a notice, hey, the car in front of you is pulling away. And people don't like that. Huh?
Yes, several automakers. To speak out for them, right? They're trying to make the road safer, right? And several automakers offer that. But when they connect direct driver monitoring to more than active driving assistance, you're getting more notifications. So like when you have the lead vehicle going, you get more complaints around the fact, that they don't want all those notifications. They don't want to be watched all the time.
So is AI being used? I mean, most of the examples you gave were around infotainment, climate, things like that.
Yeah.
Is there any application for actual driving? I mean, changing the way the driving systems work, transmissions work, things like that, just based on how you're driving the car?
I think there's a lot more going on with AI behind the scenes that the consumer doesn't know. And I'm hoping the one area that eventually we'll see more is the ADAS technologies, right? Because the number one complaint, regardless of our technologies we track in TXI, is that it doesn't drive the way I do. So until you start to better mimic that driver's behavior, you have a hard time with acceptance and trust.
And TXI, for those who don't know,
I apologize.
Yeah.
It's Tech Experience Index Study.
That's the JD Power.
Yeah, that's where we measure these advanced techs every year.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the findings that I thought was a bit surprising was 62% of the people want in-car payments.
Mm-hmm.
What's that all about?
Well, I think it's kind of a theme we're seeing, whether it's these smart technologies or whether it's other technologies that can make the drive experience more convenient. So, we saw things like in-car payments, but what they want is tap and go, right? They don't want, 12 steps through the infotainment system in order to pay for fuel or pay for parking. They want what they have on their phone. They want it very simple and very fast. And so I think there's a high desire for that type of technology, but we haven't executed it as an industry very well.
Oh, I want to hear more, because when you said car payments, I'm thinking the monthly payment on the car.
Who
wants to pay in their car to do that?
No, I mean, consumers are looking for things to make that drive even simpler, whether it's paying for parking, paying, for charging, for fuel, reserving parking, and even car washes came up as a number 5 in terms of what they want to use in-car payments for. But they don't want to go in the infotainment system, or in their phone and make all these different, steps in order to complete that purchase. They just want to tap and go.
So speaking of car washes, now car wash mode, I've never even heard of car wash mode. Talk to us about that one.
Car wash mode is another one, especially in EVs. It's really another technology that customers want. But the problem is a lot of people don't go to the car wash every day. And so they don't remember where this feature is housed in the infotainment system. But what it would do is it will roll up the windows for you. It might shut off the proximity sensor. It might close the sunroof.
Put it in neutral.
Put it in neutral, right? It does all this for you. And then when you exit the car wash, it automatically, as you get up to speed, will put it back to where it was. But what happens is they get in line in the car wash and they panic because they can't remember where in the infotainment system it is. And, and they feel like there's people behind them and now there's pressure, right, to get it done. And so this one too is just a good idea that's still too complicated.
Damn it, I have to roll the windows up.
You have to do all the work yourself.
Yeah.
But it's kind of on that theme of making this simpler.
Uh-huh.
No, this is fascinating. So, dream a little bit. Where's this AI going? I mean, how much of your car's AI will recognize you, your life, your lifestyle, the fact that you're at a car wash or you're parking or whatever?
Yeah.
How all-encompassing can this become?
I think we're at the tip of the iceberg of what it can do.
And how do you, who's going to drive this? Is it going to be the tech companies or is it going to be the auto companies that figure out how to do this?
I think the auto companies are actually really embracing this one a bit more. So, as I said, I think one of the biggest areas will be ADAS. Once we start to improve those technologies, I think using AI to learn that behavior, I think we're going to start to see greater acceptance as we move to fully automated self-driving vehicles.
Interesting that you say that, because I like to point out that traffic fatalities and crashes today are higher
Yeah.
than they were before all this ADAS technology came on board. So if AI can make it more effective, maybe it can finally start to produce the results we were looking for.
Yeah, I would hope so. I don't know. I'm not an engineer, right? But I'm hoping that that's where we see it going.
Mm-hmm.
So Kathy, one of the things that you guys sort of posited is that going forward, that it won't be so much a problem with things broken as much as it will be a problem with, say, biometric identification or getting into screens way back, back there somewhere.
Yeah.
So, I mean, how will this all be sorted out, do you think?
Well, I think what we're seeing right now is, the automakers are trying to replicate some of your experience from your smartphone. So we see things like fingerprint reader or facial recognition. And that's been really problematic. When you use it on your phone and how many times a day you go into your phone, it works pretty well. But even your phone, we've moved away from fingerprint reader. But in the car, we haven't, right? And we're using it to start the car, to load your vehicle, your profiles, right? So all your settings in the vehicle load. And it doesn't work consistently. So customers are very, very frustrated using a technology that's redundant, right? We have a lot of ways. We have some cars have facial recognition to get in, some use fingerprint reader to start. We have other ways to do that have worked well for years. And now we're adding this complicated, it seems cool, right? This technology, but it doesn't work for most people. The majority of the time they have to try multiple times.
It's one of those things that are cool for a couple minutes, and it's like, well, why can't I just push the button and start the car? I don't need to do this.
Exactly. You don't need to get your finger just right on the fingerprint reader.
Yeah.
That's been a big problem with the industry, is it's coming up with all this cool technology. They put it into cars, which drives up the price, and then they find out that consumers don't even use it or rarely use it. What would be some of the guidelines that you might give on what your research has turned up that people really like?
Well, I think one of our number one technologies this year was actually the smart ignition, right? So, just took out the step of actually having to push it, right, to get the vehicle to start. But that one was, number one. Obviously, that's on EVs right now, but that was our number one technology. And that was followed by the blind spot camera. So they love the blind spot camera. And that one we see with the ADAS technologies, when, someone provides a technology that supports a known issue like blind spot when backing up or changing lanes, even if they find it to be a bit problematic or a bit annoying, they still rate it much higher because they can see the value that technology is bringing.
Mm-hmm.
When you say this, the auto start, I mean, so basically for the EVs, when you get in the car, it's going, you just put it in drive and you go.
Yeah.
As opposed to actually hitting a start button.
Right.
And that's what people really like.
They do like that.
Interesting. I wouldn't have expected that.
A lot of, it's like the
Let's have
Tesla.
a vote on the panel. Who likes that?
Yeah, I always found it a little unnerving.
Yeah.
There are people who don't know, like, as I walk away, is it really going to shut off, right? You have that doubt.
And then you go back to check the doors and you realize that touching the door to check the door, you've unlocked the door. And you can't.
So as it started this endless loop.
Exactly.
No, it's something that I think, we've just got to get used to. But I'm sure we've all experienced that. You pull in with the EV test car, you put it in park, you get out of the vehicle, and then 5 minutes later, you're peeking outside to see if it really turned off.
Yep, that's for sure.
So one of the things that I was fascinated with your studies is, you all the car makers are included in it. And you have Tesla and Rivian that are like unofficial, but they score really high. I mean, Tesla's 873 out of 1,000 and Rivian 730 out of 1,000. And then the one that you can count because you have access to all their information is Genesis, which is at 538.
Yeah.
So what is it about those two vehicles that sets them head and shoulders above the rest of the industry?
It's really about the advanced technologies they're offering. So they're offering a lot of technologies. And in our study, you not only have to offer it, but your customers have to be using it. So, their customers, where Tesla and Rivian tend to use a lot more of that advanced technology. As John was mentioning, there's a lot of technology that's going on cars, but customers aren't necessarily using all of it or even knowing they have some of these technologies. So, their customers tend to embrace that technology a lot more.
I wonder if it's too the underlying electronic architecture that they've got. I mean, Tesla and Rivian both have centralized zonal computing, and none of the legacies have caught up to that yet. And so I think that their systems, i.e. Tesla's and Rivian's, much more seamless, much more right on the spot. I mean, it reacts so much faster than the legacy systems do.
Oh, I've got to say that in first place is Genesis, and I think that they do a fantastic job.
Oh, they do, definitely.
I mean, and their screens and just layout, I find that to be wonderful.
It is interesting, though, that Rivian and Tesla score high because their type of owner is embracing that type of technology more, it sounds like. Where I'd be curious if those type of buyers were in other cars, would they like the technology as much?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to say because they're all designed differently.
Right.
But, like Genesis, this is the 5th year in a row they've won. So, they have really set out to be an advanced technology, manufacturer. And they're offering a lot of technology on their vehicle. And even Hyundai as well on the mass market side. Remember, years ago, we didn't see these advanced technologies going on mass market, but Hyundai even launches some of them on their mass market vehicles. So they're really changing it.
And it's in Hyundai's in first place in the mass market category.
They are. This is their 6th year in a row.
6th year in a row?
Wow.
Yep.
So Gary had enumerated some of the things that are so good about Genesis and Hyundai. What else would you add? What sets them apart?
Well, I just think it's the number of different technologies they're offering to customers. So it's not just, not in just one category. It's not just driver assistance, it's convenience features. They're out front with a lot of these different technologies. They're working with in-vehicle payment systems. They have the car wash mode system. So they have some of the smart technology. So they're really in the forefront of all of these advanced technologies.
I may have to start washing test cars.
Yeah.
I'll find this car wash mode. I mean, since I didn't know it was
I think Mercedes is the only one I've seen with a car wash mode, and I think it turns off the automatic wipers and it sets up the emergency braking so it doesn't slam on the brakes when the brush is coming up at you and things like that. But it's an interesting idea.
Definitely, as we put more of these technologies on like that, right? You don't want the brakes being slammed
you don't
on,
want it. Exactly.
Kathy, I was interested to see that your research turned up that drivers don't want to share their location. They don't want to share their destination.
No.
Or their driving habits or their voice commands. But when it comes to location and destination, I mean,
they do it all day long.
Your phone knows where you are. Your phone knows where you've been. Your phone knows where you're going.
Why Waze works so well.
I was going to say, this is how Google Maps.
Right. So I mean,
what it does.
What, and I've run into this before on other things.
Yeah.
People don't seem to know what their phone is doing.
Right.
And they don't want their car to do it. Why is that?
It's definitely a different mindset. I don't think they know how many of their apps are actually tracking them all of the time, right? If they didn't go in and shut off that location services, or maybe the app won't work without it, But when you specifically ask them about that in their vehicle, they don't want that, right? They're willing to, share, their speed or, some of the other, not really important data, right? But when it comes to any of their personal stuff, it drops like a rock in terms of wanting to share it.
And I'll tell you why this came up recently. So states are looking at gasoline taxes going down. Part of that is driven by electric cars. The other fact is that all vehicles are just getting more efficient and using less fuel.
Yeah.
Hybrids, PHEVs, whatever. And so states have been talking about, instead of a gasoline tax, they'll have a mile tax. So they'll track how many miles your car goes in the world, and it can be anonymized and all that. But some people are going ballistic over this. How dare they try to track us? And I'm thinking, you got a phone in your pocket. It's doing all of that.
For sure.
And you just got in your car and logged in Android Auto or Apple CarPlay. And it's doing it right there in your car.
It is. And people have no idea how many. I mean, if you search on like how many things they can actually pull out of the car from, your phone and other information, they would be shocked how much information.
Oh, look,
is
or the
being-
car itself. Every car
Yeah.
today has a digital radio.
Yeah.
The car companies know when you're listening to the radio. They know which stations you're listening to. I assume they're monetizing all that data.
Yeah.
One of the things that they're studying now is, do people really use paddle shifters? They can
Mhm.
tell when you're using your paddle shifters or not. So, yeah, I mean, just about anything that you use in your car today can be tracked.
Right. I just don't think people realize it.
That's right.
They focus on the direct driver monitoring camera, but it's really a small piece of everything that's being tracked in the car.
Right. Well, was it this year or last year? I think it was last year. GM got nailed because OnStar was providing all kinds of data to third parties
Mhm.
who were monetizing that.
Mhm.
And then some drivers found out their insurance rates were going up because that data was showing how they were driving, and GM got sued for it. What advice would you give car companies in how they get customers to opt in or opt out, or however they handle this stuff?
I mean, we asked that exact question in our study. Like, would you prefer, if you're given a choice, would you rather be asked to opt in instead of trying to find out how to opt out? And of course, that score is really high. That's what their preference would be, is let me decide if I wanted to do that, not try to figure out how to opt out of whatever you're trying to collect.
After you read 300 pages on your screen and then click the box yes.
And, most of it is, when you're buying a new car and you're
Mhm.
going through all these forms, whether on paper or electronically, and you're just signing, you want to get the hell out of that dealership and drive your brand new car. You'll sign anything at that point.
Right.
And so you've signed away your life for them to capture all this data. And that's why I like what you're saying and what you're finding. If people are saying, no, let me opt in
Right.
on my own accord.
Of course, how much of all that captured data is making the systems better and scoring higher because they had all that data to read from?
To make the system, to
Yeah.
improve that user experience.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So you're improving the user experience based on the data that you don't want them to have.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no,
they can have yours, Perry. They just can't have mine.
Exactly. I'll take care of it all for everybody.
There you go.
that's right.
I think one of the interesting things we found is that 40% of consumers said that, if they didn't think that automakers' data protection policy was, strong enough to truly, in their best interest, right, they'd consider shopping another brand. The problem with that is I don't think most people know what the data protection policy is. So, they can state that, but, I couldn't ask one person to describe to me what is that data protection policy.
And how one car company's differs from the others.
Right.
Right.
So,
And it's all in legalese anyway, I'm sure.
right.
So who's going to hire a lawyer to say, go through all these systems and tell me which one I should go with?
And what are you going to do in the end if you don't like it, right?
Right.
Because someone else is going to be doing the same thing.
That's right.
So I've got another thing that struck me. Like, we're talking about all this advanced technology, and I see that the Land Rover Defender is the premium model receiving the Comfort and Convenience Awards for its advanced air purification system.
Yeah. So,
Okay.
so this is not your HEPA filter, right? So it has to be for advanced air purification system, it has to be in the infotainment system where there's some type of display. So, as things have changed since COVID, right? That's become more of a hot button for customers. And so having that type of air purification and, having the system there, a lot of customers will say they don't notice the difference. Some manufacturers allow you to clean the air before you get in the car through your app. Now, I would think when you open the door, the air exchanges, right? But, they seem
not as cool, though. Come on.
Customers seem to
Opening
like
the door.
that. But the one thing they really want is like this boost factor. Like if I'm sitting next to a truck that has a bad exhaust, I want to be able to hit a button and instantly clean my air and make it faster and noticeable. And that's one thing that's lacking from this technology.
Except that with AI, it should do it automatically.
It should do it.
not
It
have
should
to
know
touch a
it
button.
smells.
That's right.
But then it might start hallucinating and might just start, doing all kinds of things to your air.
That's right.
Open the pod door.
Look, we're going to have to wrap this segment up, but Kathy Rizk, thank you so much for coming on, talking about all this AI stuff. I agree with you. I think we're just at the very beginning. This stuff is going to get crazy.
For sure. Well, thank you for having me. I've enjoyed it.
Real good. We're going to give a shout out to our sponsors. We'll be back in just a jiffy.
The automotive and industrial sectors are undergoing a historic transformation. Electrification, digitalization, supply chain reinvention, regulatory shifts. The pace is accelerating and the pressure to adapt is real. This is not a time for hesitation. It's a time for bold decisions, backed by fast, effective execution. You need a partner who understands complexity, from factory floors to boardrooms, and delivers measurable results. That partner is Alex Partners, when it really matters.
The automotive industry continues to evolve, and so do the opportunities to define it. BorgWarner, one of the world's most admired companies, gets its partners where they need to go. Let's do something big, together.
All right, we're back. And this is where we get into the news of the week, what's been going on this week. And you may know the headlines. Now we want to get behind that and get our insights and opinions of what's been going on.
You know, we haven't talked about Tesla for a long time.
Almost 5 minutes.
Yeah. And I was surprised that in the third quarter, it sold 5,385 Cybertrucks.
Really?
A 63% decrease from the same period last year. And I thought, oh my God, this is the most horrible number I've seen in a long time. And then I looked at the number of electric motorcycles that Harley, through its live wire operation, sold in the first half. So guess how many motorcycles? This is a going business that has models, and I mean, they're very cool looking.
I'm guessing less than the number of Tesla trucks.
Less than the number of Tesla trucks sold.
2,000?
What do you think?
I have no idea, but yeah, I mean, think of the customer. Do Harley customers pine for a quiet motorcycle? Hell no. They'll put on loud mufflers. They rip off the one the factory put on.
This is why it's called live wire. So it's like you got Harley knowledge mixed with advanced technology.
What's the number?
A typical Harley buyer's not going to buy one.
First half, 88.
88. Wow.
For a whole business.
Wow. Well, that's the end of that business.
But I'm curious as to even how many did they even expect to sell? I mean, I can't imagine it's
probably
that much
more
below.
than 88.
Whatever
Probably
they tooled up
more.
for is what they expected to sell.
More.
That's true. Yes,
like
right.
But okay, so then my question to you guys though is that okay, if we have a ginormous truck on the one hand, and then we have a two-wheel vehicle on the other hand, neither of which is doing very well, what does this say about the genuine market for these types of products?
I don't even think that's the question. I think, what does that say about the product development process that thought that buyer was going to buy an electric whatever? And so I would argue, if you look at the Ford Lightning, if you look at the Chevy Silverado, the Ram Electric, which is never going to happen now, the Cybertruck, those buyers, hardcore full-size pickup buyers, have zero interest in electric pickups. All the people who are buying them, they've never owned a pickup in their lives. And when you look at the Harley buyer and the Harley brand, even though it's live wire, I get all that, those buyers don't want an electric one. Now, that's that buyer. If you find the right segments in whether it's two-wheel or four-wheel, you're going to find people who very much want an electric. And that's why I say, especially the full-size electric pickups, the biggest product planning fiasco in the history of the industry.
I mean, I think that they certainly have, some use, and obviously, but they don't work if you're going to do lots of towing. They don't work if you're going to be hauling if you're going to use it as a full-size pickup truck. It's, I know.
Let's see.
Okay.
It's a full-size pickup truck, so
but it's
you'll
also
use it as a full-size
but
pickup
it works
truck.
as a family. I mean, so I'll just use my own example. I have a full-size pickup truck because I tow occasionally. Most of the time, it's a daily driver and it just drives around. So we have a vehicle that's, we use its abilities for 5%, but we bought the hybrid so that we could get better fuel economy. If you had an electric truck, and so that brings you to the new Ram, the Rev. The
EREV, right?
The EREV,
Which has now been pushed back yet another year,
right?
And it's going to go into the Grand Wagoneer.
I was just going to say the Grand Wagoneer will be the first one out with it, and so basically this is the extended range electric vehicle. So dual motor, full electric vehicle, but an engine underneath the hood to generate power. So you never run out of juice. They say about, with the Grand Wagoneer anyway, about 150 miles of electric only. So for most cases, you're driving an electric car all the time. You need to go somewhere, you can put gas in it, you drive around, and you have the gas engine. So that's, for a pickup truck to have that, if they can pull it off, because, they've pushed it off so many times now, that seems like the ultimate solution, for a vehicle that you can drive around every day as an electric, but you can still have, the capability to tow, to do all the big truck things that people need to do with trucks.
All right, John, are we ever going to see it?
Yeah, we'll see it. But will it sell is the question. And I think a lot of that's going to depend on how they price it.
I was just going to say.
And, so if I'm a typical SUV owner, full-size SUV like Grand Wagoneer, what's the advantage for me? If especially I got to pay a lot more, whereas the one I've got just does everything I want fine. Why should I pay more for this technology? So there's got to be more to it than that. So if there's bi-directional charging and, I can plug it into my house if the power goes out, now you're starting to talk to me about other things that, I'll start to consider it. But if it's a whopping big premium over the ICE version, it's DOA.
So do you think that the Stellantis announcement that is going to go into the Grand Wagoneer, very premium vehicle, is indicative of what the pricing will be?
I think it's indicative that they woke up to the fact that full-size pickup buyers don't want this technology. And not the EV plug-in, they're not interested. Maybe someday, but not today. And so when you look at who's buying Grand Wagoneers, very high-income people, probably fit the profile of somebody who's more interested in a plug-in. My guess is that's why they've pushed the Ram EREV way back and are going to launch this technology with the Grand Wagoneer.
I think you're right, though. I mean, and they have said that it will be available at every trim level, that the new engine, the extended range engine. So theoretically, there could be, relatively affordable.
Yeah.
But they haven't announced the pricing of what the
premium is going to be. Yeah. Because
right, but they're putting it in the Grand Wagoneer rather than in the Grand Cherokee, let's say. So it
makes sense, I think, to, at least when you're first launching it, if you someday have hopes to putting it in other vehicles.
Also, when you get into an EREV, there's a packaging issue, right? You're going to have a battery in the floor. You're going to have an engine. You're going to have
it was developed for the truck first, so it had to go into something with the truck platform, right?
Yeah. Sean's saying it's got to go into the truck and the Grand Wagoneer share the same platform. So exactly right. Speaking of Stellantis, what did you guys make of this $13 billion investment in the United States, bringing Jeeps?
5,000 jobs.
5,000 jobs. What do you think, Gary?
I think it's great for Michigan and Ohio and Illinois and Indiana. I think it's big money being spent on manufacturing here. I think that it's the right move. They're saying it's over 4 years.
Correct.
The money's going to be spent.
And $5 billion of that $13 billion over 4 years was already announced earlier.
Right.
They've repackaged it into and it includes the money that the suppliers are going to have to put into boosting up all this manufacturing.
Right. So A, fantastic news, but B, as you say, you've got to look at the fine print and see where this is going to be going. Stellantis North America really needs some help in terms of its product portfolio. I mean, we see Chrysler with one vehicle, right? The Pacifica.
Yeah.
We see that Jeep has been, for the last year or so. I mean, things are getting better now, and the Cherokee will come out and it'll do even better than that. But still, I mean, it needs help. What's going on with the Dodge brand? Now, part of this money will be spent for a new Durango, which I'm sure people would like to see, but that should be money well spent, and it's money that they need to spend.
Yeah, it is. Before everything collapsed under Tavares, Chrysler North America, I'll call it Chrysler, Stellantis North America, accounted for 60% of the company's profits. So here's Antonio Filosa, the new CEO, going, oh my God, I've got a basket case on my hands. Where do I prioritize? And he looks at Fiat and he goes, man, Fiat, I don't know. That doesn't make any money. And Peugeot's profitable, but it makes some money. If I get, North America turned around, I could make real money. And so he's prioritizing that to the detriment of some of his other plants. So Toluca used to make the Compass, I think, if I've got that right. And I want to say Melfi in Italy made it as well. And the Cherokee was made at Melfi, and they were tooling the Canadian Brampton plant to make the Compass. He's pulling that all out of Mexico, Canada, and Italy and putting it in Illinois. I mean, to me, that's an extraordinary move. It's great for the Illinois plant, but it's going to hurt those other operations, taking, product away from them, volume away from them. But to me, it shows just how much importance he's putting on the U.S. market. And of course, it's all driven by Trump's tariffs, right? So he's packaging it up. They're taking, hey, we announced that $5 billion before. It doesn't matter. Put it into the new announcement and put it out there, because that's how you deal with the Trump administration. You go, look how much I'm doing for America.
Well, I mean, to be fair, I mean, other companies have done the very same thing. I mean,
Apple
had announced an investment, and
absolutely,
it was under Biden, and then they said, "Oh, but we're investing money."
Again. Here it is. It's just, I mean, it seems like in the long run, it's the logical thing to do. Like you said, for the the tariffs are gonna are so unknown. This is gonna at least alleviate some of that issue. And like you said, it's more jobs. And even if it is money that's being, it's being resent again, whatever, it's still money being spent.
It's still billions.
Exactly. And to your point, I think it's, if they can turn around the North American market and get some new product, I think it's a good thing for Stellantis.
Yeah.
Okay. So here's my question, you guys. Okay. So, talk about $13 billion. Okay. Now, we heard earlier this week, General Motors, $1.6 billion.
In write-offs.
Write-offs, right? Okay. So this is money that they're not going to have, essentially, in one way or another. Okay. But the question becomes this. As we're seeing the probable decline of electric vehicles in the United States, stranded capital as a result of that, because there's going to be lots of battery plants and assembly plants. I mean, what they announced, Factory Zero, is going to be down till the beginning of the year, I believe. I mean, it's just like, okay, where does this money come from?
Well, it's the money's been spent. Okay. The money has already been spent, and now they've realized, make up a number. You've got Factory Zero. I'll say it's probably capable of making 250,000 vehicles a year. They're coming nowhere close to that. They were going to have Orion build electric. Now they're converting it to ICE trucks. So they've got stranded capital, which is sitting on the books as an asset. It's no longer an asset. It is unproductive. So they have to write it off. So that reduces their assets, which in turn reduces shareholder equity, which CEOs and other top execs hate to see happen, because part of their bonus is tied to growing shareholder equity. So when it shrinks, these execs are going to lose part of their bonus.
So, but I mean, my question is that, okay, for a company like Stellantis, which has not been making a whole lot of money these past several years, where does this come from? I mean, you sell products and you get money, right?
Right.
So if you don't sell products, you don't get money.
Right.
So did they have this money just sitting around and it's like, oh, let's spend it now?
No. So when you write down an asset, the money has already been spent. What you're now saying is this $1.6 billion that we declared that we have in assets, it's no longer there. They don't have to shell out cash. This is a non-cash charge.
No.
But for the
so they're going to be spending money on Warren Truck. They're going to be spending money at the powertrain plants in Kokomo. They're going to be spending money at the Toledo assembly complex.
They're going to borrow it.
Jeep. So
they're going to borrow it.
That's what
I mean,
yeah.
normally, you generate positive cash flow and you fund your operations out of the cash that is extra, we'll call it. And in Stellantis's case, it's been running negative cash flow. So the only way to do it is either you sell more stock, and who wants to go out and buy Stellantis stock right now, or you go to the banks, or you issue bonds, or you go to the credit markets and raise capital that way. And that's what they're going to have to do.
Spend money to make money.
So at the end of the day, when all these products come out, what will this do to the pricing? Which, as we just saw this week, we now broke 50 grand in terms of the average transaction price for a vehicle.
Yeah.
It was on the local news this morning. I was shocked.
It's a big deal.
It's a big number. People look at that and they go, man, I can't afford a new car.
It doesn't seem that long ago that it was in the 30s. I mean, it seems that it climbed quickly.
It did. COVID and the chip shortage, popped the price dramatically.
Yeah.
Okay, here's another topic. Perry, I'm going to throw it to you. Toyota announcing that it's going to come out with a new luxury brand, the Century, and position it above Lexus. Had you heard this?
I heard little bits and pieces of it. I didn't realize that they were putting Century above Lexus, though.
Above Lexus. What do you think about that, though?
I don't know that there's enough market for a higher level of luxury car. I mean, as it is, you look at the numbers, the sales numbers for Lexus versus Toyota, and it's a tiny fraction of what Toyota sells, and now they're going to get a tiny fraction. I don't really understand the value and what's going to make those cars more luxurious than, is it going to be all based on experience? Because that's the new luxury, is that you get to go and have first class experience when you go to the special Century dealership, as opposed to, I don't know, I don't really see where there's a win there.
So just to put a finer point on your difference between Toyota and Lexus. So through the third quarter, there were 1.6 million Toyotas sold
in the U.S.
and there were 270,000 Lexi sold.
Right. So is Century going to be a smaller number than that? And why are you going to develop a whole new...
I think they're competing with Rolls-Royce and Bentley. Right. My question to you, John, is what will that be vis-a-vis the Celestiq?
Yeah, well, I think they're looking at the Cadillac Celestiq and go, wait a minute, we can do that. And, GM has set up the Celestiq. They only make one or two a day. I mean, this is extraordinarily low volume. I think Toyota is looking at the Celestiq. They're looking at Rolls-Royce and Bentley, and they're looking at the ever-growing amount of very high wealth people in the world and realizing, we ought to play in that. And no, we're not going to sell a lot of cars. I mean, what does Rolls-Royce sell every year? 6,000 cars, something like that.
Yeah.
And they have a tidy little business built around 5,000 or 6,000 cars. And so I think what Toyota is doing is saying, look, we're the biggest car company in the world. We're the best car company in the world. We can play in that segment too. And we're not going to go in and lose our ass on it. We're not going to make a lot of money, but we are going to put our flag on the top of the mountain saying, we can be as good as anybody out there in the world.
I think the problem is that when you get to that level, it's so much about the name and the mark and everything else.
Yes.
I mean, Rolls-Royce, Bentley,
right.
Cadillac doesn't play in that field. I mean, even though they have the Celestiq, it's
Celestiq,
whatever you want to call it
that way. Well, we wouldn't hold it against you.
They're the. I hate to say it, but they call them they're the IC cars.
Yeah, right.
But I mean, sure, Crown is known in Japan, and maybe,
in some other places,
and in some other places.
But
Century.
Yeah,
Century.
Century.
I saw the crowd outside. I saw the crowd outside.
Right
They're singing Crown. But yeah, I mean, it's just not going to have. I don't see that they're going to garner that many, and I guess maybe they don't need that many. But I don't see Rolls-Royce is going to look. Oh my God, Toyota's the big competition.
I would disagree with you on that one. I mean, it just seems to me okay. So going back to Lexus, and you didn't live here then, but you did live here then when Lexus was announced at the Detroit Auto Show. And you remember they were like in a basement room in Cobo Hall. There were no windows. I mean, it was just you can't imagine that being associated with Lexus. And I remember like Detroit's like nothing. They're not gonna be able to compete with us. They don't know how to do this. And And what happened? You know, within a matter of years,
Yeah.
right at the top of the heap. I got to believe the guys in Goodwood are like, oh my God, what's going to happen with Toyota's manufacturing prowess coming in?
The only question I have is why you would call it a Century, you know, because the Celestiq, that's how I say it, is all about burnishing the Cadillac brand. It's all about trying to get Cadillac back to where it was in its heyday, the standard of the world. Back where you can drive up to your country club in a Cadillac and all the Mercedes and BMW and Audi people look at you and understand why you bought it. They don't ask you, oh, nice car. Why did you buy a Cadillac? They're trying to get that question out of the discussion altogether. So you put out this halo car, the Celestiq, hand-built, $400,000, blah, blah, blah. I think Toyota wants to do the same thing with the Century, but why would you create a separate brand? Why, to me, there should be some connection with Lexus. So you even bring up the prestige of the Lexus brand.
They don't need to. I
Maybe that's right.
I think Lexus is doing fine, and I think that they're at the point where Akio is just going, you know what?
There's more.
Or no, we can show the world we can do this too. And you know,
And if that's the goal, then
and if it doesn't work out, we'll sell more Camrys.
and that's probably, I mean, you're right. Toyota has the ability to do something like that where a smaller company might not. And so, yeah,
I mean, their knowledge of carbon fiber makes what Cadillac can do. I mean, they're here, Cadillac's here. I mean, let's remember that Toyota started as a loom company, and making fabric in carbon fiber is basically fabric in resin. Those guys know this stuff just cold, and so I think they can do amazing manufacturing stuff. And they're like, we'll make some.
Yeah.
And
okay, another topic this week, which is hitting the industry, Gary, China really clamping down on the export of rare earth minerals and magnets and motors.
Well, okay, I think this is largely a political game, and so it becomes, you know, where you come down on the tariff thing. I think that there are some people, perhaps in the administration, that are surprised that China can say, like, oh, we got stuff too that you want, and if you're going to put these big tariffs on us, then we can play that game too. And farmers are finding this out right now who aren't selling their soybeans to China, right? I mean, it's like costing billions of dollars, okay? Because China said, well, we'll just get them from South America instead.
Yeah.
Okay. And so if we're going to have good relationships with countries that are, you know, economic powers, and let's face it, China's an economic power, and they happen to have, like, what is it, 90% of the processing capability,
if not more,
for rare earth materials. Yeah. I mean, and we need this stuff.
Yeah.
Well, don't we have to play nice?
Theoretically, yeah. And I think you're right. I mean, this is what it is today, and it can.
I know, but what do you do if you're an automaker or a supplier that needs this stuff now? And, you know, earlier this summer when China first started this, Ford had to shut down its Chicago assembly plant for a couple of weeks because they couldn't put electric motors in there.
Right.
They didn't have the magnets.
And they use these magnets for all kinds of stuff in cars.
Right.
I mean, it's just like in, you know, everyday cars, not just electric vehicles. I mean, it's
in the motors that move your mirrors, that move your seats, that blow the fan and the HVAC. They're in everything. I think this is going to be potentially the next crisis for the industry this year.
Well, so I happen to notice, and maybe you guys saw this, that Automotive News had it today, and I looked into it a little more, that there is a Dutch-based semiconductor company called Nexperia. And apparently the American government said to the Netherlands government, that company's owned by China, and you basically need to take control of this company because we're worried about you know, privacy issues and technology exchange and things like that. Okay, so now you have a government seizing a chip company, right? How do the guys in China feel about that?
Probably not very happy about it.
Probably not very good, right? And so I looked into it. It was a Dutch founded company, and a few years ago went up for sale, and a Chinese company bought it.
Mm-hmm.
And so the technology is arguably Dutch, but who
Controlled
owns
by
the
China,
key?
yeah.
Who owns the keys to the building?
Yeah.
And I think that is going to become a big problem, because these
Yeah.
are chips that are used for cars in all kinds of applications. We're not talking NVIDIA level things. We're just talking, again, regular.
Well, we're probably
chips.
talking NVIDIA level too. Look, the Americans dominate advanced chip design. The Dutch dominate the equipment to make it, and the Taiwanese make it. And that's the whole, trilogy of chip production. And of course, I mean, I'm sure the Chinese leapt at the opportunity to buy one of these Dutch manufacturing companies. And so, yeah, I think you're going to see a lot of this happening. But, bringing it back to the auto industry, the crisis is here right now over getting these rare earth minerals to make the magnets, or get the magnets, or get motors with the magnets in them.
I mean, if there's no other solutions, I mean, no other locations to find them.
Well, one thing that's interesting is General Motors very astutely 4 years ago started investing in U.S. mines and U.S. processing centers for rare earth minerals to make magnets. So based on what I'm reading here, GM by the end of next year will have fully integrated either U.S. or ally sourced magnets, and it's the only automaker in the world that's done this. So GM could be in the catbird seat here if China is really clamping down on this stuff.
Be interesting to see how long it lasts.
Well, there's another interesting thing too. There's a Canadian company called Cyclic Materials that recycles all kinds of things to get the rare earth minerals out of them.
We're not doing so well with Canada right now.
I know. Well,
I should point that out to you, John.
that's right.
And then since Stellantis doesn't have product in Brampton,
yeah, they're not very happy about that.
They're not very happy about that either.
I know they're not. But this is maybe one area where the Trump administration will play nice with Canada, because it may have a source with all these recycled materials to be able to get it. Anyway, we got time for one more topic.
All right, so S&P Global Ratings, I read this today. They came out with a number for what they're predicting next year to be. Okay, they've upped what this year.
You mean for car sales?
Car sales. Okay, so this is U.S. light vehicle sales. So they upped it for 2025. They upped it to 16.1. Okay,
where were we last year?
You have that number? Last year was 15.8. 15.8.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so what do you think 26 will be? Okay, so they're predicting we'll have 16.1 this year. It was 15.8 last year. What does it go to next year?
I would say 15.8. That's where I'm going to.
I was going to say it's going to go down 15.9 or 16.
15.3.
Really?
Oh, whoa!
What do they base that on?
Whoa!
Did they say?
They're smart people.
Okay,
well, number
besides
one,
the fact they're smart people.
we've had a lot of pull forward this year. Everybody raced out to buy a car before the tariffs, and then they raced out to buy an EV before that went away. And the automakers so far have largely not passed along the cost of the tariffs.
All right, so here are factors that actually they're smart people, and then they have factors too.
So I figured the smart people came up with some things. Yeah,
it's a good thing I wrote them down.
Yeah.
Okay, narrowing cushions at households to absorb back-to-back macroeconomic shocks of high vehicle prices, ongoing inflation, rising unemployment, and high monthly payments for auto loans and leases.
Right.
So basically, the consumer
doesn't have the money to go out and buy another car.
Right. And I would add on top of that, which ties in perfectly with what you're saying here, we're seeing near record, or maybe record levels of subprime people defaulting on their car loans. It's at the same level it was in 2008, just before the market crashed.
Wow.
So the the people with bad credit scores are not going to be in the market next year.
Okay, so quickly, then I got to ask you, okay,
Yeah.
going back to this whole issue of car companies spending all of these billions of dollars, what happens when the industry goes down to 15.3, if it does?
Boy, if we think things are tight right now, it's nobody's going to make money at 15.3.
No.
Nobody.
Especially, like you said, if you're spending that much money right up front
You got to pay back
to-
those loans.
to make more cars that no one's going to buy because people aren't buying cars.
Yeah.
That's a tough situation.
And on that happy note, jeez.
Yay, the future.
Actually, we got to do a show on
Happiness?
positives. No, I'm not saying happiness. There's actually a lot of really cool stuff going on in the industry right now, under the surface. A lot of really clever ideas on how to take out massive amounts of cost, ways of really advancing technology. And it's and we do it a lot on this show. We talk about all the problems because they're right here, they're right now. It is reality. But we got to think about doing a show that says, hey, wait a minute, there's actually some good stuff that's coming.
The good news show.
Yeah, the good news. But anyway.
For those of you who are listening to the podcast, there are a lot of eye rolling going on.
Yeah. Right. Anyway, Perry, great having you back on the show.
Thanks for having me. It's always a great time.
Yeah, good. Gary, always good to be with you too. And I want to thank all of you for having tuned in.
AutoLine After Hours is brought to you by Alex Partners, when it really matters, and by Borg Warner. The automotive industry continues to evolve, and so do the opportunities to define it. Borg Warner, one of the world's most admired companies, gets partners where they need to go. Let's do something big together.